Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Morning for those of us on the West Coast, where it is still 9 a.m. and I know it is 12 noon on the East Coast and 10 a.m. Central Time. My name is Michelle Albert. I am the president of the Association of Black Cardiologists, and I'm thrilled today to bring you our second workforce webinar, which we plan on these programs being annual programs. We had a similar program last year. Our program today is entitled Towards Inclusive Excellence in Cardiology Training Programs. And, is part of a series of workforce initiatives that we have initiated at ABC. Our programs are intended to educate the general public as well as our cardiology training community and other interested parties about cardiology training programs, as well as strategies for success in cardiovascular disease fellowship. So we are pleased that you were able to join us today for this program. I will start by introducing some of the initiatives that we have in ABC related to workforce. And I will share my slides at this juncture to be able to proceed with that. So, the ABC has been around for almost 50 years. And over the course of time, there have been several ABC pathway programs aimed at trainees and faculty across the life course. As you can see on the slide, we have programs for middle and high school students all the way to actually faculty. We have a component of ABC Youth for undergraduate and graduate students. We have members as mentors. We have ABC collaboration with academic enrichment programs. And for medical students, we have several scholarships. As a matter of fact, for me, I was a recipient of the Dr. Richard Allen Williams scholarship when I was a medical student in I won't say when, but as a second-year medical student, I received the Dr. Richard Allen Williams scholarship. And it actually acted as a pathway for a continued relationship, not only with the Association of Black Cardiologists, but also engendered a relationship with cardiology and academic development in general to this point in time. And as you can see on the slide, there are a series of also programs for cardiology fellows, including partnerships with some of the HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. We have an annual cardiology and training education program, the J. Brown Abstract, which is a pretty popular competition within our program, as well as other programs that you can see on the slide. Over the last year and a half, we have deployed several workforce initiatives. And as you can see on the slide, this is one of them, the Program Director webinar series. And we recognize that many of our webinars are actually viewed post the live deployment of the webinar. These programs are posted on the ABC website, and you can go back and folks oftentimes will view the programs in retrospect. We have an ABC Workforce Roundtable, which occurred back in January, for which a manuscript has been generated and is in undergoing review. We had a workforce program also at the National Medical Association, or NMA, conference this year, and also there is a manuscript that is accompanying the proceedings of that conference as well. And we actually also deployed a workforce survey surveying our membership regarding their experiences in cardiovascular medicine and their needs. And that also, the data related to that survey is forthcoming in the first quarter of 2022. We've also been working on something called ABC DIBS, which I have on this following slide, which is Association of Black Cardiologists Cardiology Training Scorecard, where we are ranking cardiology programs based on their diversity. And as you can see on the slide, the ABC Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Scorecard programs will be ranked as poor, at risk, or excellent, initially based on two criteria: the number of underrepresented in medicine, generally cardiology fellows engaged in their fellowship program, currently enrolled in the fellowship program, as well as a change in the number of fellows over time, a 4-year time span in cardiology programs. And please look forward to these data also forthcoming in the first quarter of 2022. And just to be clear, the first two groups of UIM that we will be focusing on will be Blacks or African American and Hispanic or Latinx fellows in cardiology, general cardiology training programs. We also have, I just want to make you aware, on the horizon, we have a cardiology development and leadership retreat, which will occur in conjunction with the association of the ACC, American College of Cardiology program. And then right in the next week and a half or so, we will have an ABCHA mentoring session at AHA Scientific Sessions, where we will have a mentoring room across the career life course for our members. I just want to give a shout out to the team that has been involved with working on many of our workforce initiatives. Not on this slide is one of our co-chairs today, Kevin Kwaku, Dr. Kevin Kwaku, as well as Dr. Narissa Hayes, who've been instrumental over the last year in helping to put forward many of our workforce programs. We also have this professional working group that works around the workforce programs, and these members are listed in the slide, and I want to call them out: Drs. Michelle Johnson, Dr. Edmund Nancy, Dr. Saber Lucy, Dr. Kevin Alexander, Ms. Uzumu Kubiri, and I already mentioned Dr. Kwaku and Dr. Hayes. So with that, I want to introduce our co-moderators for this second webinar. I first would like to introduce Dr. Debra Dixon. Dr. Dixon is a cardiology fellow at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. She obtained her medical degree and master's in clinical research from the Lerner College of Medicine at Case Western University before moving on to Vanderbilt School of Medicine and Cardiology training program. Yeah, she is an avid researcher, actually, and I know Dr. Dixon through our time together over several years now as part of the Sarnoff Foundation. She does research focusing on the prevention of heart failure and preserved ejection fraction. Her passion lies in the realm of clinical research. I also know Dr. Dixon now, as she has joined our Nurture Center, Center for the Study of Adversity in Cardiovascular Disease working group at UCSF. So welcome, Dr. Dixon. I know that you will help Dr. Kwaku co-chair an exciting discussion. Our next co-moderator is Dr. Kevin Kwaku, who is well known within the ABC. He's co-chair of the ABC Cardiology Fellows Committee and is currently the director of cardiac EP at the Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, and he's an assistant professor of medicine at the Giesel School of Medicine at Dartmouth. He previously served as chief of cardiology for Kaiser Permanente in Honolulu, Hawaii. He is elected to the Board of Governors of the ACC, and he earned his MD and PhD at Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons and completed his medical residency in cardiology fellowship and EP fellowships at Harvard's Massachusetts General Hospital and the BI Deaconess Medical Center, respectively. He is an author, co-author of numerous peer-reviewed papers and of 3 book chapters in translational and clinical EP, and currently serves on the editorial board of JACC, Clinical Cardiac Electrophysiology. When not treating cardiac arrhythmias, Kevin enjoys hiking, skiing, international travel, and NBA basketball, and listening to jazz. Very refined, Dr. Kwaku. So welcome, Drs. Kwaku and Dr. Dixon, who will introduce our panelists for today.
Thanks so much, Dr. Albert. I assure you I'm not so refined when I'm cheering on my basketball team, which will go nameless, but you can probably guess. So thanks everybody for your time in the middle of the day or for the first half of the day, depending where you are joining us from. Cannot appreciate or express our appreciation sufficiently for the information that we're going to discuss today. So I'm delighted to join Dr. Dixon in welcoming all four of you, Dr. Annalisa Crowley from Duke University School of Medicine, Dr. Gladys Velarde from University of Florida College of Medicine, Dr. Josh Knowles from Stanford Medicine, and Dr. Joe Cannon from Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, who, as you've heard, had the privilege to work both under and with in the past. So, Joe, if I get too familiar, just slot me back into my place. All four of you have the very difficult task of serving as program directors for your respective programs. And I would like to just go around the horn, if you don't mind, to give an opportunity to perhaps tell me a little bit more of what your program looks like, how many fellows you have, and any particularly distinctive aspects of your program that you'd like to call out at this point, so that folks listening in can get a sense of your program. And I would just say one piece of housekeeping for people who might sign in and want to ask questions. We would ask that you use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and not the chat box. And that way that can be curated as we go along. So in no particular order, I think I will ask Dr. Velarde to start off and tell us a little bit more about herself and her cardiology program.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Kwaku. Thank you, everybody, for the invitation. This is an honor to be here discussing this very important topic for all of us. I have been at the post of program director at my institution at the University of Florida for the last 7 years. The University of Florida College of Medicine in Jacksonville is a major medical center that serves as the largest academic training institution in North Florida and the second largest campus outside of the one campus in Gainesville, where the medical school sits. We serve as the public safety net hospital for the Jacksonville community for Northeast Florida and Southeast Georgia. Because of that distribution, it is paramount that we reflect the community that we serve, and that was one of the missions that I was trusted upon when I took this position. We have a total of 16 general fellows, 2 interventional and 2 electrophysiology, so that is 20 fellows altogether per year. We have been an accredited program for the last 36 years. So we're an old program. We've been very established, and we're a very clinically oriented program. I have to say that the last 7 years, and I don't know how expansive you want me to be on this answer, just to give you an idea of what we have is, we've tried to keep our diversity representation in our fellowship in the 30 to 40%. It has been difficult. It was not an easy task to embark upon 7 years ago, but I think that we are definitely getting to the 40% number. And we can discuss further, if that's appropriate, not appropriate, but I think it is in a robust number for what is on the pipeline, which is something that we still have to fix. And I'm so delighted to see all the efforts that ABC is doing. So I will stop there, perhaps just to say that about 60% of our graduates do pursue 60 to 70% pursue subspecialty fellowship training, and that in and of itself has implications in the diversity that has to be on the continuum of cardiology as a specialty. So I think I'll stop there.
Well, thank you for that. You dropped a few impressive numbers over a relatively short period of time, and so for sure we're going to have to come back and dig a little deeper and see how the program can achieve those kinds of numbers. Dr. Crowley, would you like to speak to you about Duke?
Oh, yeah. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak today. Truly honored to be here and for this invitation. My name is Annalisa Crowley, like you mentioned, and I am currently the program director for general cardiovascular disease at Duke. I'm in my 4th year doing this. Our program is a fairly large program. We have a combined 43 fellows of general and advanced subspecialty trainees. The majority of our trainees do seek subspecialty fellowship training, and we are a combination of both clinical and research. We do sort of offer 2 years of research for each of our general fellow trainees, should they wish to pursue it. So we do have both a combination of clinical and research opportunities. The demographics of Durham are increasing numbers of an increasing diverse population. So the patients that our trainees see, and like Dr. Velarde had pointed out, we would like our fellowship to match the demographics of our population, which includes an urban population that has growing numbers of underrepresented patients that self-identify with underrepresented ethnic groups. So we would like our fellowships, and we've been trying hard as we get into the discussion today to try to have our trainees match the community that they serve. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. I think that's going to be a topic that we're going to get to. What is the metric, and how broad? I mean, you can't ask the programs in Alaska to represent that of the continental United States, and so where should the circles be drawn? We're definitely going to get to that, and that's a really important thing. So thanks for that, Dr. Cannon. If you would like to pipe in and tell us about your program.
Sure. My name is Joe Canham. I'm at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, which is one of the 3 teaching hospitals of Harvard Medical School. I took over as a program director 5 years ago. I've been at BI as a faculty member since 1995 and had the pleasure of working with Dr. Kwaku as he came through our program. We, as others, are trying to increase the diversity of our program, as Dr. Crowley said, to match our patient population. And I think you really have to be quite deliberate about it and actually keep track and statistics of what you're doing. Just to give you an idea of this particular application cycle, we had 755 applications for 8 slots. 7.9% of them were Black. But of the 75 people we chose to interview, 25% of them were Black. So we really made an extra effort to increase the number of people that we were looking at. And as of now, in the first out of the first 10 people that we're ranking for this coming season, 4 are Black, 2 men and 2 women. So we're making extra efforts to really to get people to be interested in our program. We have a wide range of clinical and research activities going on. We have 8 fellows per year for a total of 24 general fellows, and then 4 interventional, 4 EP fellows. So, and then a heart failure fellow, and then other people doing research tracks. So that's kind of a makeup of our program.
Terrific, thank you. And so that leaves you, Dr. Mills, West Coast representative without the tie. Please go ahead and tell us of what's going on at Stanford.
Yeah, thank you. And please call me Josh. I'm the program director at Stanford, which is shown here. This is our brand new hospital. We're in the San Francisco Bay Area, about 35 miles south of Dr. Albert. And I have the pleasure to serve under the leadership of Dr. Eldrin Lewis, also ABC member. And I'm really happy that Kevin Alexander, pointed me in the right direction here to be part of this great panel. We work in one of the most diverse areas in the world, the San Francisco Bay Area. I think we have about 50 or 60 languages that are primarily spoken by patients that we see. And we are been around since the 70s as a training program. We currently have 7 first-year fellows, 7 second, 7 thirds for 2021 general fellows. We also have fellowship programs in adult congenital heart disease, interventional cardiology, electrophysiology, imaging, and heart failure. So we have a large program and are looking to expand as we attempt to serve larger groups of folks south of here, especially. We have special expertise in our academic research intensive program. We offer all of our trainees a year or 2 of training in research, and so our mission is really to train the next generation of leaders in cardiovascular care. And we have an extremely collegial atmosphere and look forward to getting into the discussion with everybody about how we continuously improve in areas of diversity.
Thanks very much, Josh. Appreciate that. So, our theme for the first half of this is really to try to share and describe and maybe even brainstorm if we come across things that have not yet been implemented, strategies for achieving equity and diversity in both the recruitment and retention of underrepresented minorities in medicine and in cardiology specifically. Some of you mentioned some numbers of your own programs, which is very interesting. And I'd like to know a little bit more, if you could sort of give us a little bit more granular details about what was the experience in either getting there, if you feel like you're getting there, what sort of specific changes you had to make. So, for example, Joe at BI, you mentioned a pretty big change there in terms of just, for example, number of people invited to interview. And so how do you get to that? Nobody's interested in simple quotas. I think that I've heard a whole host of varied approaches. Dr. Quinn Capers, who's spoken and written a lot about these issues, makes a point of saying that recruitment like this should be mission driven, and if the mission is to deliver excellent care, having diverse workforce is part of that. But I'm just curious, for each of your institutions, if you'd like to just perhaps share one or two. I think this idea of intentionality, I've heard from all 4 of you already. But to give us a sort of very specific things that you've done to try to improve representation. And Josh, since you're on the screen right now, why don't you pick up with that?
Oh, I was hoping Dr. Crowley would start because she's done so much in this area, and I'm always trying to learn from her. Is it okay if I throw it to her first?
Well, that's all right. Yeah, and then she can talk a little bit about her work with with her slides, and we can work off of that. If
sure.
And I know that Dr. Crowley agreed to take that ball and run with it first. So go ahead.
Sure. I was wondering if you could show my slide. So we had a wake-up call a couple of years ago in 2016 match cycle for 2017, where we did not match a single woman, and we had only matched one underrepresented in medicine applicant. And we took this concerned our program. So we undertook an initiative to address a lot of the issues that we're going to talk about today. So I just wanted to share a little bit of our experience. If you wanted to read more, this is published in JAMA Network Open in January of this year. We were fortunate to get an insightful editorial commentary by Dr. Albert as well. So I think the steps that we took that were instructive that are addressed for the topic of today were that we established our institutional's commitment to wanting to change. So we were able to partner with our institutions and our institutions' resources to make the change happen. I think for this audience, the relevant steps were for our fellowship recruitment committee. We did make changes. We restructured it to be more inclusive so that we would open our fellowship committee to anyone who wanted to be a part of it, with the stipulation that they would attend the committee meetings and interview the applicants for a certain percentage. Based on some of the numbers that I think a lot of the other panelists had shared this on the session today, was there's a lot of data that suggests bias is decreased if you can include at least this 25% of any sort of underrepresented group to be part of any selection or interview committee, or the applicant pool. So we tried to get our women faculty to get to be 33%. We did not have enough underrepresented in medicine faculty members, so we aimed for 20%. So we wanted our committee to reflect the diversity we were hoping to achieve in our applicant pool. So we had our committee be invested. So those were changes with the committee. Then when we made some other specific steps during the recruitment stages at applicant review on the interview day and sort of ranking for recruitment, we removed some of the criteria. And again, I've been fortunate to be a colleague of Dr. Capers and have published with him and have learned from him about the USMLE licensing criteria not necessarily being a reflector of future promise as a cardiologist. So we removed that as a score criteria. We blinded our reviews to applicant pictures. And while we did not have quotas, again, we were hoping to get in each of the years since we've tried to get our applicant pool to be at least 25% women and 25% underrepresented ethnic groups, which is it's our goal to just have that be representative of the pool. The way we get there is we give each application 3 blinded reviews, and then everybody on our recruitment committee who actually wants to be, but definitely including our underrepresented, our URIM members on the committee, will look at every applicant we've received from that was a URIM to make sure we did not exclude anyone that we should give an opportunity to interview. And using these rubrics, we've been able to achieve the goals that we wanted of the numbers of people that we interviewed. Then during the interview day, I felt like the changes that we made that seemed substantive was, and a lot of this was done sort of pre-COVID, but we tried to schedule a lot of for our interview day, when we have time to interact with the fellows and faculties, we try to highlight our URIM faculty to make sure that people, to understand just the realities of what it's like to be a fellow, and also our faculty and their trajectory to their leadership pathways. I also work hard to try to schedule everybody to make sure, for me, I feel like it's more meaningful to read the applications in detail to understand. And we ask our applicants, all our applicants, who they would request to meet with. And we try really hard to get them to interview with the person who could serve as a potential future mentor for them. We do try to have someone from a URIM background. Fortunately, we have people that are generally in the area of interest that people want to meet with the applicants. I interview every single applicant so people know what they're getting if they come to our program. And we used to have a wrap-up session when it was, and we have it virtually now in person, when it was in person, and now we have a wrap-up session to answer any specific questions. And then with the ranking meeting, again, I think we just do a lot of checks and balances. We added a criteria of distance traveled, which we previously didn't have, which was, I learned a lot from my previous work with Dr. Capers. So I think we added sort of the criteria. We valued it and we made it part of our mission statement. So we will grade people on it. And then, we'll discuss our top candidates, but make sure that, again, we're not excluding anyone. We'll go back and look and say, is there anyone that we're excluding? I think, with these sort of substantive changes at the committee level, the applicant review stage, the interview date changes in your ranking committee, we had just to show kind of our results in the next slide. If you could go to the next slide briefly. Yeah, so you can see sort of that blip in 2000. The blue panels on the left are women. The underrepresented in medicine group is sort of peach color in the middle, and the combined groups are in the tan color on the right bars. And the top row reflects the first year matriculants, and the bottom row represents the nature of the total fellowship. So with these initiatives that started in 2017, you could see we were on sort of a downtrend. I will say, one thing that I didn't mention that maybe predated a lot of this is we did some soul searching, and we sent a lot of surveys to the people who we ranked to match from these backgrounds that did not choose to be with our program. So a lot of what we changed about the interview day and the parent, the interview process was based on feedback from applicants that we wanted, but didn't end up matching. And then we were able just to show the demographics of our institution. I think 2020 matriculation is the last year that this shows, but it was sustained for our 2021 entering class. Our first year fellows that year was about 50% women, and our underrepresented group was just under 40%. Our overall fellowship currently is 33% underrepresented in medicine groups, and we're about 50% female. So I felt like over a short year period of time with some of these changes, we were able to see an increase. So I'll mute myself now.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. That's really commendable and a lot of work, I know. You mentioned you read every application yourself. I'm just curious what that number might be.
I think the same people that applied to our program applied to the BI, because I think we had 756.
Yeah.
I block off 2 weeks a year. Here we go.
That's right. And I'm sure it's well, seen as RVU generating by your institution. So really interesting what we heard here from Dr. Crowley. And everyone will get a chance to pipe in, but I have one area that I'd like a little clarification. Tell us about that distance traveled sort of variable that you have.
Yeah, so I'm actually happy to have the group on the panel help me figure out maybe the better way to do that. I think it's the resources that any given applicant had. What did they do with the resources and opportunities that were available to them? If they started with a high level of resources and did not much, I would look at on that in an environment that was very supportive with lots of resources and did not do very much. I think compared with someone who was in an environment that maybe did an equal amount but did not have as many resources, did not have access to as many opportunities, then I think that we would rate that person higher.
Thanks for that. Okay, so now, Josh, I'm going to call on you. What do you think about that? And what?
Yeah, I love that. I wish I don't want to reiterate all the steps that Dr. Crowley identified, because I think I'm a big proponent of the idea that there's this managerial literature that supports the statement that what is measured is done. And you have to really credit the leadership here with Bob Harrington and others that arrived on the scene and said, we can do better. And many years ago instituted a lot of changes to make us aware of our own issues. We have diversity committees within the Department of Medicine and the School of Medicine. Everybody underwent all kinds of implicit bias training, and I think that was also helpful. And the other things I think that we have is we needed to identify our strengths and lean on them. And the fact that we had individuals like Hannah Valentine, who was a faculty member here and head of diversity at the NIH, diversity in the workplace, and Eldrin Lewis, who has an amazing story of distance travel, of course, and he can, I'm sure you're all familiar with that. And I think one of the things that we had to do is highlight the fact that we have those faculty members that can serve as mentors. And so we profiled a lot of them on our website, shot videos, and they told about themselves. We highlighted what we've done over the years. And historically, Stanford has been relatively average in terms of diversity in both fellows and faculty. About 10% of our faculty members are from groups traditionally underrepresented in medicine, and about 10% of our fellows over the last 10 years. And about 35% faculty are women, and about 35% of our faculty are fellows have been women. So it's not been horrific, but it's really an idea of continuous improvement. And we instituted many of the same things, taking a very close look at all of the applicants that we get. We don't get quite as many. It might be hard for people to envision living in the Bay Area. We usually get between 500 and 600 applications. About 5% are from Black applicants, about 5% from Hispanic Latinx applicants, and really take a very hard look. We interviewed fellow applicants from 22 different residency programs and tried to exactly weigh the idea of distance travel as something important and projecting what folks could become with the proper mentorship and the proper resources that are necessary to launch a real academic career. And then we have to highlight what we do once they get here, once fellows get here in terms of support for and mentorship support, grant writing support, sponsorship and national and international committees and local committees, et cetera. So I think it's really some of those things those are some of the things that we did.
Thank you for that response. I'll also ask, as we have more commentary, sort of, I think of interest to current program directors on the call would be, what were the challenges that you had when trying to implement these changes and see how they're successful? So what have you done and how was it challenging to implement and change the culture as you went about this process?
I can take that one since I haven't talked in a bit. So I think there's a couple of things I think the program directors have to do. I think a lot of us get kind of caught up in traditional pipeline programs, so programs that we're traditionally drawing from. And what we've deliberately tried to do is get away from that and really take an honest look at a wide, diverse group of programs. So I, like Dr. Crowley, actually look at every single application. And I think there are a couple of tips. One is, so don't go to your traditional pipeline programs, the ones that you're traditionally drawing from. Two, don't discount foreign medical graduates. So, don't use that as a screen to say, we're not going to look at anybody who didn't go to medical school in the US. Three, I think trajectory is very important, and we really stress that. Where did you start? Where are you now? And where do we think you can go? And even if you're not starting at the same spot, we'll take a very close look at you if we think your trajectory is really on the upward spiral. The other thing is, we don't, board scores and publications, a lot of people, sorry about that, use that as a metric, and we consider it, but I think you have to really look at that and not be so wedded to the fact of, well, how many publications does this person have and what are their board scores? So if you just take that And then the one thing that we found now that we're really opening up the pool of programs, I think you have to have a sympathetic eye to letters of recommendation. So, a lot of the programs we're used to drawing from have, awesome recommendation letters from and kind of a templated format that we're all used to reading. But you can't hold the applicant necessarily accountable for maybe not the greatest letter writer. So we've really tried to look at as well with a sympathetic eye. So those are just some things that I think the programs can start doing to really kind of diversify the applicant pool they're going to look at for interviews.
Can I make one comment? I want to jump off of what Dr. Cannon said. So the letters are very interesting because there's a lot of literature out there that for women and for those underrepresented in medicine, and it's a double hit if you're in both populations, where the language that people use in the LORs are not as sort of traditionally as strong. And there's a rubric based, you can see that. And what's really interesting is that you're right. You have to have a careful eye to say, okay, I think we know that people, when they write the letters, traditionally are not using the language. Another interesting point that I did want to make is, as letter writers, because I know a lot of you on probably who are attending the webinar and obviously on the panel and moderators write these letters, there's actually resources out there where you can upload your LORs and it'll tell you what, like if you've got an LOR in there, and it'll tell you what you're traditionally, like where in the rubric your letters are, what percentage of your vocabulary and your verbs in particular are supposed to be strong and reflective of strong applicants versus traditionally what people would use to describe sort of softer medicine skills that are often highlighted for women or those underrepresented in medicine. So we can make positive changes in the letters that we write and just be cognizant of it as you're reviewing the LORs, because they may not appear as strong, but there's a literature suggesting that there's bias. It's a good point.
So I would like to.
Absolutely. I was going to say it's only recently, I think, that people have been getting more formal sort of training and awareness of this sort of implicit bias in letter writing, which very well documented, particularly across the gender gap. But I want to pivot to you, Gladys, actually, to ask you, because you are now in the position of power as a program director, but you have also gone through the process yourself of being an underrepresented in medicine student and resident and fellow. Do you feel that you bring any of that along with you now, or does it provide you with any particular lens in your work that you're doing in Florida?
Absolutely, right. We represent and represent so much. Much of what we bring to the table is crafted on the history that we bring, and so having been there, having gone through the process, you use it to build the future. And it sounds, so grandiose, but I think it makes you a better messenger when you've gone through it yourself, when it's not something that is just in the literature that is being analyzed and studied because of this fact or the other. It's just your history, and you are able to be perceived as more genuine in your mission. So at least that's what I hope. When I started, things were, and there were a few things that were said that I completely agree with. And it's interesting that the research and the writings of Dr. Crowley kind of mirror stuff that I've been doing, that if I wasn't doing that, I wouldn't have been able to get the 30% or the 40% that I'm trying to achieve. I just didn't put it in writing because there was no time to do that, right? I was taking care of 3 kids and doing all these things. But But it's interesting that what you put in your, what you have in your table of changing your environment, how critical is that, right? You got to have equity-minded people, and that process is a very difficult process. When you come to a new institution, you got to incorporate and try to change that culture. And that is so difficult, but it's so critical. Then Dr. Cannon mentioned being deliberate. You have to be deliberate. And I think my own experience answering your question has made me more deliberate in the things that I wanted to accomplish. And you have to be deliberate, and you have to bring, translate whatever your goal is, in this case, diversity and inclusion in medicine and in cardiology, to say to your institution, this is good medicine. This is good medicine for this place, and actually is good medicine for the entire United States. So I think my own experience has really helped me be a better messenger, I think, and hope that is sustainable, because it is hard. I know that Dr. Cannon mentioned that the pipeline, I think the pipeline is critical. If we're still dealing, and I had 800 applications, and much like you, I read every single one of them. And my RVU does not reflect that, obviously. And I pay a lot of attention to the letters of recommendation and the language. And to dissect it is a challenge, because it's not homogeneous. You know, some institution says this candidate is excellent. The other one says it's very good or outstanding. So I don't know what that means. Outstanding, excellent, superior. Those are qualities that you hear, and it's very heterogeneous. So it takes digging into the record and finding those differences that might ring through. But I think the pipeline is important because we're still stuck at 5%, So if you have 5% of your 800 applications, well, we're competing for the same people. We're not going to increase it. So I think the pipeline is very important.
Thank you for your comments. And one thing that was talked about and discussed as we introduced ourselves is sort of how things can be region specific. So can you tell me about any region specific challenges you feel like you have in terms of recruiting diverse applicants to your programs?
I can tell you from the Boston program, it can be very tough to get people to get out of their comfort zone. And that's for the trainees that are on the call, residents and fellows. I would encourage you, get out of your comfort zone and explore some of these programs that might not be close to where you are right now. I mean, I think all the top programs in the country are like us, are trying to diversify their fellowship with the ultimate goal at BI. Our goal is actually to diversify our faculty. So we look at the way you get faculty as really, you have two ways, right? If you use a baseball analogy, you have the farm team, which is the fellowship that you can then promote to faculty, or you can get a free agent, somebody that you hire from another institution. I consider the program directors heads of the farm team. So if we can get a diverse fellowship, then we can then promote them to faculty. I mean, at BI, regrettably, we only have 2% Black faculty in the Department of Medicine and only 4% Latinx. And we have a lot of work to do. And it's good that we're transparent about it. We understand we have a big problem with it. And we're trying through the fellowship to try to get people to come to the place. But it is a challenge for us in Boston if we're trying to draw from other areas of the country to get people to pick up and leave. But I think, what we're trying to offer is, excellent training and inclusive environment, very collegial, but we need our trainees to be willing to pick up stakes and potentially come see us.
Great, thank you. Dr. Albert.
Thanks, Dr. Dixon. This has been a really fascinating and interesting discussion. And I think that it is a discussion that, you know, is happening across the life course of trainees for medicine, right? So, you know, this discussion about distance travel is something that gets paid a lot of attention to for medical school admissions. As you know, medical school admissions for certainly many of the top medical schools have been able to really revolutionize the proportion of students who are UIM in the medical school. So it's really exciting and refreshing to hear that our cardiology fellowship programs are starting to really focus on the distance traveled. I would say, though, that, you know, from a PD perspective, one of the things that continues to be a problem, especially in the top programs, is the ability to take risk, right? You know, if the BI Deaconess Medical Center and I'm just pulling your programs just because you're here with us, and we are grateful that you're here with us. But let's say if BI Deaconess Medical Center and Duke are interviewing maybe the same 750 or have the same 750 applicants to the program, then chances are usually there becomes a feeding frenzy around, you know, about 20 people, right? And, you know, I would just ask program directors to think about, you know, taking a risk, you know, on at least one person, you know, per year that you may not have that feeding frenzy around. I mean, the goal is to make sure the program is able to support the person or persons once they enter into the program, right? So it's that, you know, sort of stepping out of the comfort zone for the trainee, but also stepping out of the comfort zone for, you know, when the rank lists are created. I think that it's also refreshing to hear about the standardized testing, right? And I think that Dr. Crowley, you brought that up. Dr. Canman, you brought that up as well. And I think that this is a real, you know, sort of knuckle in these processes that, as you know, standardized testing scores correlate with preparation for standardized testing scores, standardized tests early on, you know, so back when somebody's 5 years to 10 years old. And given the inequities and disparities we have related to our education system in that regard, this is a, you know, this is a major plead, and certainly, you know, at the medical school level, that the MCATs, you know, are being less prioritized. Step one is pass fail, and certainly in the UC system, you know, SATs have been essentially eliminated, recognizing that these things are a problem. And then, you know, I think that one of the things that we often hear is that, look, these scores, you know, correlate with how people, you know, perform on their subsequent exams in programs. And while that is true, I would want the audience to think about, you know, sort of if you correlate a statistic or a metric with another metric that are proximally related in time, then of course they're going to correlate, especially if the support systems are not in place to engender belonging and success for the candidates. So this, you know, gets to the whole concept of the holistic review. And then finally, to the candidates, I loved the conversation. I'm loving the conversation about stepping out of comfort zones because, you know, for, you know, success in any career, right, whether it's medicine or outside of medicine, really being able to take a risk and step out of comfort zones are really important. For UIM, that can be a little bit more challenging because it brings with it some other social risks that for non-UIM, those social risks are not necessarily there as much. And so when we think about, you know, stepping out of comfort zones, I think that's really important. But it then puts an added onus on programs to make sure that once people step out of those comfort zones, that the social support systems and the emotional support systems are in place to really engender success for candidates. So those are my comments, you know, at this juncture, listening to the conversation, but thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Albert. I appreciate your comments, and I think that's an excellent segue into our second topic, which is strategies for success in cardiovascular fellowship. And so what I'll ask the program directors to comment on is what are the features or unique aspects of your program that help to create that supportive environment socially and or during training to really encourage applicants to step out of the box and step out of their comfort zone, and embrace the opportunities that your program has to offer. And then I will sort of pass the baton to Dr. Knowles first. I see you've had some excellent comments in the chat, so I'll give you the opportunity.
Oh, wow. Okay, thank you for that. So I think this is really a critical thing because we need to treasure our fellows once they get here, and we need to do everything we can, and the most difficult transition. I mean, it is hard to transition to fellowship. Cardiology fellowship is challenging. We all know that, but it's even harder to transition to the next step, because when you're in cardiology fellowship, it's a relatively proscribed course. You're going to do your certain months of echo, you're going to do certain months of cath, you're going to, and people that match at our programs, they're all hardworking, they're all diligent, they're going to get it. They've had discipline over the course of their careers, and they're going to all get that. But then really the key is, how do you nurture the next step in the career? How do you nurture independence? And that is a combination of mentorship and sponsorship and skills development beyond just the traditional things. So, I mean, obviously we have a research intensive program where we're focused on trying to engender the skills that are necessary for that career. So we have things like grant writing professionals and courses that help fellows that might not have had the opportunity to write papers and grants to take that next step. We have the ability, we have training grants that allow people, academic success. The number one predictor of success in academics is years spent in academics. And if you have not had a long runway, it's a long runway. And if you might need a little extra time to get the skills that are necessary to take you there. And you need to have a program that is willing to put in the time and the effort, to launch those careers. And I think that's really critical. And then the last thing is, you have to have a group of faculty. It's see one, do one, teach one. It's the same mantra as anything. You have to have people that in your faculty that have done it, that say, look, I can identify, Shirin Jimenez, or I can identify Fatima Rodriguez, or I can identify Kevin Alexander, or Eldrin Lewis, and I can say, look, I can see what people have needed to do to succeed, and I'm going to take tips from them. And so I think those are some of the critical things that you have to have to take that next step and to make fellows successful in that transition.
So I may jump in to add. Once we are able to recruit them, obviously the effort it's a must, and it has to be the environment again. I go back to the environment. The environment didn't cease to exist before you brought them in. It has to continue that same mentality, and the system has to be there. Specifically, some of the things that have worked for our program has been pairing them. So pairing not just the mentor, the one-on-one faculty mentor, and obviously the program director being the big mother, the big mentor figure, but also the faculty mentoring one-on-one, but the pairing with another fellow that has gone through a similar experience. So the pairing has worked well for us. For example, a mother fellow that has gone through pregnancy during fellowship, paired with a woman fellow that may be encountering or considering the possibility of pregnancy or is pregnant. And so pairing them has worked well for us, and hopefully will continue to be that way. And the sponsorship that you spoke about, Dr. Knowles, is just not the mentoring, but the sponsorship. If they want to do thrombotic research, matching them with people that have the tools. And we have now a new institute that gives them the basics, not just for those that have a lot of publications, but those that may not have a lot of publications, but they want to venture into, being more involved in academics with our resources to take those courses, to have some, an hour out of their day or their assigned rotations to do that, to join that specific quality improvement program or that specific track that is not necessarily meant to make them researchers, but at least give them the tools to really become more knowledgeable, and then stepping out of that comfort zone to make them venture into areas that they might not have thought of. So those are some, and wellness support. The wellness support being integrated with psychological support. We created that about 2 years ago because the experience is stressful. And it's more stressful if you are a minority with kids at home or have ailing parents that you're caring for. So these are all factors that you cannot create an equation for, but you have to be thinking out of the box to try to give that supportive environment that I keep referring to.
I can jump on a little bit of what everyone said. Obviously, everything that everyone has said, I wholeheartedly echo. A couple of opportunities that I think gets at one of the chat box questions just for the group was what other sort of resources can you give to support them as they transition to faculty? Our institution, we partner a lot. I mean, obviously, we're not doing this in isolation, and part of this this forum here is to compare experiences with other institutions. But even within our own institution, our Department of Medicine has a minority retention recruitment committee, and the university as a whole emphasizes these things. So we partner with those organizations. The reason that's helpful is there are a lot of grant opportunities for our fellows that are institution-wide for all fellows, regardless. But there, in particular, there's a program called Reach Equity Grants that is targeted for fellows, residents that are doing research in health disparities or improving and decreasing health disparities research. So I think that there are opportunities within the institution to get grant funding for projects and topics that may be of interest to fellows. It's maybe a little bit less competitive to get an internal grant than it is to venture out to get an external grant. I think are things that we do. We also try to support, our fellows by funding them to go present their work at conferences, which I think is another way you can support them. I think we were fortunate to have one of our former fellows win the Dr. J. Brown Abstract Award. So I think supporting them by nominating them for committees, whether it's the FIT councils through the AHA, the ACC as well, or the ABC, and encouraging them to present by supporting and funding their travel, giving them opportunities for grants. And then at our institution, we have one of our electrophysiologists, Kevin Thomas, who's done a lot of work in the area of health disparities, is our dean for underrepresented faculty. And he helps partner with the fellows to set up a mentorship trajectory and you're sort of mapping out. It's called Advance Up. It's a program that he started where we try to mentor the fellows through to faculty, because we do retain a lot of our underrepresented in medicine trainees on our faculty. So there's just a couple other additional things that we do at our institution.
Great, thank you very much. One question I have for each of you, sort of just give a brief understanding of your perspective, is what are the challenges that are commonly faced by those underrepresented in medicine sort of in your program, and how have you worked to address those as they come to your attention?
I can start us off. I think, as everybody said, we think a key to success really is mentorship in multiple phases, whether it's a second-year fellow looking out after a first-year fellow, whether it's the program director, the chief, or we assign a faculty mentor and they have research mentors. Our particular struggle has been our, paucity of Black faculty members. I think that's very important. If you have an underrepresented minority, it'd be nice to be able to pair them with, a Black faculty member, for instance, and that's been our weakness right along. So, we're trying to improve on that so we can add that extra step. But on the other aspects, I think we're pretty well covered. I think the other important thing that the other panelists have also mentioned is really creating a collegial collaborative environment. That's basically what we're trying to sell on the interview circuit. When we have people coming to our program, that's what we're selling. We're selling BI is a fun place to work. You're going to get along with your colleagues. It's going to be a collaborative, not competitive environment. And if we can convince people of that, then I think we can be successful.
So I think, Joe, one of the things you were mentioning here, and it's almost like a sort of an activation energy that needs to be achieved, or really a critical mass. And in order to you need a nugget to have a snowball. I mean, I work just 2 hours north of you, where it's certainly even more true. And so that fellows will be coming by to interview, and they kind of look at their faces of people that might look like them. What are some thoughts, either from you and from the others, for other programs that may be earlier on this pathway to try to have their workforce reflect your communities better, to get started? I mean, Josh, you mentioned at the beginning that you're working in one of the most, if you look at the whole San Francisco Bay Area, one of the most sort of diverse areas on the face of the earth. But then mentioned you had about 5% African American fellows, 5% Latinx. So how do you fill that gap? It sounds like even Stanford has a critical mass problem. I don't know. You want to take that?
Yeah, it is a critical mass problem, and I think I love that first slide that Dr. Albert showed of the efforts to increase the pipeline. I mean, we need to make people really enthusiastic about cardiology as a career. I mean, and medicine as a career. I have not watched all of Black Men in White Coats, but I've seen parts of it, and it's very disheartening to see that it's lost. Medicine has lost some of its luster, and I think part of that is that's an issue. That's an issue, and Stanford again has been relatively average. About 5% of the applicants that we get are from groups traditionally underrepresented in medicine, maybe 10%, and about 10% of our faculty, are from groups traditionally underrepresented in medicine. But that's really not, obviously that's not good enough. And nobody's crying crocodile tears for Stanford. I mean, like we're going to do fine. Like we have great leadership, we have great resources, we have the great ability to make careers important. And there's a lot of programs out there that don't have the same resources. And so I don't want to be like, and those program directors have their hearts in the right places too. I mean, they want to do the right thing. But I think it's an idea of continuous improvement. One of the things that we're really trying to do, and that Eldrin is really trying to do, is say, one of the ways that we can make medicine more attractive is by increasing our reach, our scope, our patient population, showing that we can. One of the challenges that we have is that applicants say, wait a second, I want to treat patients that look like me. And if only 5 or 10% of the patient population at Stanford is Black or African American, people might not want to train here. And so we are trying to increase our outreach to other areas and increase our footprint and thereby increase the number of jobs that we have available. And I think all those things are really, really important as you're trying to improve things.
Well, thank you for those comments. I do think that is important to have the research and training opportunities that underrepresented in medicine candidates typically gravitate towards in populations that they aim to treat. I'll just ask if anyone has given each of our panelists an opportunity to say any last comments before we sort of transition to the question and answer portion, to give everyone in attendance the opportunity to ask those questions. I know there's a couple presenting in the chat. So if there are any last sort of burning comments that anyone anybody would like to make, please make those now.
I think my last comment was, again, everyone's highlighted and touched on this, but I think, it's hard for me to think of the fellowship program as just getting the feeder pool. So part of our fellowship things are reaching out to the middle schools, the elementary schools. So I think that when you're thinking about building your pipeline, we don't traditionally think that way, but I think we have to, because for everybody, I know as Dr. Albert pointed out and others pointed out, there are some, everyone's fighting over the same top 20 candidates. I think that if we increase the pool and get people to see this way, so I think partnering with a lot of the initiatives that I think the ABC has done really, really is probably the key to everybody's long-term success.
Thanks for that.
I know. I was going to just say, just a couple of tips for a lot of the residents and fellows who I'm sure are on the call. I think, a couple of things. You have to start thinking about applying for cardiology fellowship early. You have to start figuring out who your letter writers are going to be. You have to think about what you're going to put in your personal statement, and you might want to have somebody look at it and read it and really get some eyes on it, so you can really make your application as strong as possible. Think about doing a scholarly project. It doesn't have to be research. It could be education related or teaching or leadership. But all those things are going to reflect nicely on your application. But you have to think about it early. You got to get your ducks in a row, and you got to kind of get going. Hopefully your medicine program directors are giving you a timeline of when they want things done, and when you identified the right people to write your letters. And for letter writers, we traditionally see a lot of letters from cardiologists, which I think is great. But I think it's even more important to have letter writers who really know you, who can speak to you about who you are. So that doesn't have to necessarily be a cardiologist.
I think those are excellent points. Thank you for those. So yeah, I think that at this point we will enter sort of the Q&A period as we wrap things up. We have a good 10 minutes before closing remarks. And I have a couple of them that have come in through various, through the Q&A box, as well as through the chat and other areas. So one question, a very specific question that has come up is, how do you regard, DO applicants? Are they at a disadvantage? You as opposed to an MD and in each of your programs? Dr. Velarde, if you haven't spoken for a bit, I'm going to call on you first.
Yes, I actually replied in typing to that question because I believe those biases have existed and still exist. I do believe that we are improving. The MD community has been more receptive and acknowledge that there are wonderful physicians that are DOs, and that their training is rigorous, and they have been established for quite a long time. So I do believe that historically there has been a bias, and it's important to recognize those things. For our institution, it has been I would say easier, because for the last decade, so 3 years before I joined as program director in cardiology, the program director of internal medicine is a DO. So his representation for attracting internal medicine residents has made it easier for us. We get a good number of applicants that are DOs, and we have graduates in the fellowship that have been DOs, and they have and perform equally as good as any MD. So that should be something that I wish the conversation didn't have to go there, but it is a bias, and we have to recognize it. But we are certainly, I think, probably better than other institutions because of that, of having the luxury of me having landed with an IM program director that has been DO for the last decade.
Sure. You got to use the all the opportunities and that you have to distinguish yourself. And if you have somebody who can help break down those barriers more naturally, I think that's an absolutely natural thing to do. Do any of the programs here? We talked a little bit about the costs and both some time and money. Particularly pre-COVID, when we were not interviewing virtually, interviewing, but even in the virtual world, do any of your programs have a second look program, and how do you target candidates for that? In particular, some programs in the past had funded, second look opportunities or able to help support folks coming back to check out a program. We see that more at the level of medical schools, I think. And is that a viable option in trying to reach out and get those, perhaps less stereotypical candidates that you may want to take a chance on?
I can go start with that. I think we're struggling with this. I mean, there were so many advantages with Zoom that these last two application seasons that we were able to look at a bunch of candidates that wouldn't have necessarily applied because they would have to travel to our place. I think we are worried that post-COVID, when we get back to likely in-person interviews, that could be a problem. And is there going to be, if you try to do a hybrid where some are doing virtual and some are doing in person, is there going to be a bias there? So we don't know quite what we're going to do. I mean, there is a chance we might do the more virtual platform going forward, just to be able to look at people that wouldn't necessarily check us out. But I'd love to hear what other people are considering doing afterwards.
Or maybe put it a different way, could it be that the virtualization of the application, particularly the interview process? I'd be curious. Do you feel like it sounds like Dr. Cannon feels like perhaps it's leveled the playing field? Is that a feeling that's generally helped by having sort of giving access now to greater numbers of applicants?
I personally do think that the virtualization has opened up the opportunities for people that cannot travel, and that's a big deal. And I cannot minimize that. In fact, I want to say that Dr. Cannon is right. There's a current conversation of how about hybrid models going forward, and how about currently there are institutions that are interviewing their internal applicants in person and virtually the external applicants, and some programs in the program directors trained chats that we have say, well, that's not fair. It's not fair for the external applicants you're not seeing them in person. And others say, well, the internal applicants are there and they want to be seen in person. So you're never going to satisfy everybody. So in our institution, what I decided to do was to interview everybody virtually, even if I cross him on the hallway, that I knew that the internal applicant was there. I thought it was important for our panel, for our selection interviewing committee, to see them in the same light and see how they performed under the same circumstances. Is it a perfect model? It's not going to satisfy everybody, but I thought it's probably the fairest thing to do currently.
I have a couple of comments on this topic. So the first is our institution, like all of our GME does offer a second look. When pre-COVID, the applicants would have to attend, which could be a cost barrier, but then the entire weekend was financed with dinners and panels and social outings with the fellows on a whole GME institution-wide initiative. They've been doing that virtually. It's actually tonight. So it's like a second look, and we invite all of our underrepresented in medicine faculty. A lot of my fellows participate in these activities, as it's a resource for these fellows when they come. The other idea that, again, to be very clear, this is not Duke's new policy going forward, but it's an idea that I've toyed with, but I'm struggling, and maybe this panel can help me with. When we go back to in person, if the barrier is cost to getting applicants here, when you think about the rest of the world, when you go out for a job interview, you get paid to interview for those jobs. So I feel like maybe if morally, or my value system is, if someone cannot pay to come, should I then extend to pay, across the board for the applicants that we are the most serious about? So I would say one option is, if we, right now we interview, I think, again, similar to, I think a lot of BI, some of these other programs, we interview about 65 to 70 applicants a year. We take them all out to dinner in the in-person world. But if I interview a smaller cohort, but pay their entire way, maybe that gets at equity and the in-person component. What it decreases is everything else we're trying to include, like about being inclusive, seeing more people. So I don't know that it's the right answer, but I wonder if I have a fixed pot of money and I don't have more money, maybe one suggestion is to interview fewer people, but pay for them. I don't know what the group thinks about that.
I worry about interviewing fewer people, because that seems like you're then kind of getting a little bit more selective. So that would be we actually had the same thought, that should we consider, that kind of thing where you pay for the travel to the place, to our institution. And, we're kicking that around, haven't really gotten serious about it. But I do worry. I mean, this year we actually, because we had so many good people, we said, oh, I'm going to interview 65, and we ended up interviewing 75. I mean, there's always like extra people that you like. And it seemed like we got more applications than in previous years, and, and really good ones too. So I don't know, I think you'll have trouble with that, if you're trying to decrease the number of slots. But
Yeah, I agree. It's the balance, right?
Well, what a interesting, a debate that we've come across here. Maybe we'll have to pick that up next time and see what programs decide to do with respect to that sort of bifurcation. But we're 5 minutes from the close, and I would like our president, Dr. Albert, to sort of bring us home, if you would, Michelle.
Thanks, Kevin. And I want to, again, really thank our program directors, Dr. Cannon, Dr. Velarde, Dr. Knowles, and Dr. Crowley, for having actually the courage to come to ABC and share their hearts and be vulnerable to being asked tough questions. And thank you for your thoughtful approaches to your applicant seasons. And it's pretty clear that all of you are committed to ensuring that we have a diverse workforce that addresses unmet needs. One of the things that we will be doing with this program, as well as our other program, is actually packaging it and ensuring that it is delivered to as many trainees as possible those within ABC as well as outside of ABC. So please note that we will be doing that. I also want to thank our staff, Mr. Alan Merritt and Ms. Uzuma Unukubiri, who have helped to organize this program today. And also would like to thank our co-moderators, Drs. Kwaku and Dr. Dixon, for helping to usher in a very enlightening conversation. You know, many important topics were touched here. And, you know, as with any program, there's not enough time to cover everything in depth. But it was very refreshing to start with holistic review and distance traveled, and then now ending with distance again from the perspective of what we're going to do in the future related to interviews in order to ensure equity. So thanks everybody again, and thank you for tuning in, our audience, to our Towards Inclusive Excellence in cardiovascular training programs. Thank you on behalf of the Association of Black Cardiologists.